some valuable information. This is Nick Cotto. He is our, did I say your last name right?
Absolutely.
All right, perfect. He is our Sentinel-1 SE. Nick and I have been working together for coming on 2 years or so. And we've got a great working relationship. We've been able to cover a lot of ground, learn a lot of things, and we're hoping to share some of that with you today. This is supposed to be a dialogue, so him and I are going to work together, and if you guys have questions as we go through this, feel free to bring them up. We'll try to answer them as best we can. If we can't get you the answer, we'll get back to you. So that said, we're going to go through a little bit of history of AV, how it became EDR, and then ultimately is now kind of headed towards XDR. The ingestion and the ability to react and orchestrate remediation of additional and many event sources. So let's kick this off then. A brief history of EDR. Nick's going to help me out here, but basically, as we go back in history, we started with basic AV that was signature based, and we moved into.
Caleb,
yes, sir?
Can you bring the mic up to your face a little bit more?
A little more, about there. I can do that.
How about here? Can you hear me okay?
You have to do that, right?
Go ahead, Nick. So, again, kind of starting back at the beginning with the I Love You virus. From there, it went from something of, entertainment, not even what I would consider threat actors doing anything totally malicious. It's just, we found a way to do something with these systems. I'm going to do it because I can. And then, of course, led to the point of, as the digital age started to grow, technology became more and more abundant at the enterprise levels. Suddenly, we started seeing those malicious actors, the very first founding malicious actors realized we can utilize these tools and these exploits to gain access to information and to data that we can then do with this information. There are individuals out there who, let's say something like competitive intel, that could end up becoming very valuable if they get their hands on that. But how do we get our hands on that? And that's where you kind of get the introduction to the threat actors in the first stages of malicious activity.
Is it safe to say that since those were all really signature based, they were pretty easy to identify back in the day? And
Absolutely.
as technology has matured, as things have changed, it's become less signature and more activity or intention based, shall we say?
Exactly that. And as a previous semantic alumni, I understand the legacy AVs out there. It really was a game of cat and mouse, where this exists. We have a definition for this activity. If we see this exist in the environment, we will do our remediation, which at the time, of course, was a kill and quarantine.
Mm-hmm. And as we've started to learn what that looks like, we've also realized that threats come from not just the endpoint, they come from the whole network. So as we move into the future, we're looking at there we go. We're looking at more of the extended detection and response, where we're able to ingest and respond to multiple data sources or data points and take corrective or remedial action on that stuff.
Absolutely. And especially with today's age of technology and tools, what we really need to see are remedial capabilities done at the quickest methods possible. So, like, for example, taking the experts at Highpoint Network, the admins, managing multiple tools and supporting multiple clients. The way the Sentinel-1 approaches it today is we were built from the ground up with a differentiator in mind. So machine learning and AI as driven as part of the main components of the agents running on those OSs at machine speed without need of
Can you
definitions
turn up his mic?
allows us
It's
to
the one that's
provide
running right now. He's
standard
got
level
the
of remediation beyond, again, the standard legacy vendors of kill quarantine.
So Highpoint started in that AV space. We moved into the next generation of antivirus, which we were just talking about. And as we were evaluating vendors, we believe in best of breed.
Do you think something went wrong?
I think you're right. I'll continue. But Highpoint believes in best of breed. So as we evaluate the landscape, as we evaluate vendors in the space, and as we look to the future, the ever-changing landscape of threats, we took several months and evaluated many of the market space and many of the players We used the Gartner Magic Quadrant, and we identified the top players in that sector. We evaluated those. We took 11 engineers, and we did head-to-head testing with all of those. It took us, let's say, 4 to 6 months, plus or minus.
I will say, and if I can interject.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have supported many partners and even more direct clients through centers and proof of values and demonstrations and collaborations. The questions and concerns that the High Point team brought to us was honestly some of the most relevant that I have experienced to date, which allowed us to be able to tell a better story and really present that platform to you all as something that we felt would be an absolute, again, best solution for what you offer your clients.
Yeah. So what we found is through our head-to-head testing, as we were evaluating endpoint solutions against each other, was there was a clear winner. We found that SentinelOne was the clear winner. They had the best ability to execute. They had the best vision for what comes next, and we were actually pretty blown away by their MITRE attack results. We'll actually get to talk about that a little bit here in a minute. So with that said, we ended up selecting SentinelOne as our primary partner. We've been working together now for a couple of years, and it's been a fantastic partnership. As of writing this, there were new MITRE attack results, data that were released, and figured we'd go through those instead of using old data.
Absolutely.
So if you want to talk through some of SentinelOne's performance in the last MITRE attack
Yeah,
results.
absolutely. So, I mean, again, it is with an ounce of pride that I get to say that, you know, as far as the detections, protection in real time detections in these environments, and MITRE, just to call it out, they don't mess around with their testing. It is neutral, but essentially what they're looking for is what is the efficacy of the platform right out the box. And so with this last round of testing, we did 100% accurate detections, 18 out of 18 attack steps identified. And then when it comes to the remediation and protection, again, we're just right out the box with the automated controls that we have in place, deploying the agent to the systems, we were able to provide, again, 100% of that protection. And so as you see the 13 of 13 MITRE attack tests, for the full range that they provided, we hit every single mark as far as remediation. And then again, moving at machine speed. So again, we want to take as much of the workload off of the analysts and admins, let's say here at High Point, as possible so you can focus on their day-to-day. So with that real-time detection, we handle it all locally, moving at machine speed, and giving that information contextualized and up into the console for review. So that again, the experts can go in and analyze that information on top of what was already prevented through remediation. And so the last thing I want to call out is, again, it just works. And it comes right out of the box with everything pre-built into the agents, deployed, allowing you to be able to essentially, I hate to use a term like set it and forget it, but that really is the approach that we're trying to take.
Hey Caleb, can
Yes,
you
sir.
share your mic with Nick, please?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Just pull up, tell Mike isn't picking up online.
Oh no.
Got it.
Is that any better?
You're not taking it to do like the Secret Service.
Maybe swap it to your other lapel, since you're kind of facing that direction.
That's just gonna go around your neck before we're done, isn't it?
Absolutely. I'd have it no other way. Let's see here. Test, is that any better? Confirmation?
It is for us, sounds better here.
All right.
Steve, we good over there?
Yes, we're good.
Excellent.
Awesome. And just for those that are attending online, we're having some technical difficulties with our projector. So,
A new one is coming.
what'd you say?
A new one is coming.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. We got a new one on the way. Which is good because the
Say
last
something.
bit of this is going to be difficult for your live demo.
Oh, I can tell a good story at least.
You told good jokes earlier, so there's that. So the big question is why we're in front of you, why we think that you should work with SentinelOne, work with High Point is we have a dedicated team of analysts. We are not a traditional provider in that we have jacks of all trades. We have dedicated engineers that work with SentinelOne exclusively, or our security stack, I should say. We are able to respond to events and detections in real time. Our analysts will remediate and review anything that's detected, and if they don't have a direct answer at the time that they're reviewing it, they'll actually be able to communicate with your teams and make sure that we're all on the same page as far as what was detected. We already talked to the minor attack framework, but the original results that we were able to review were fantastic. I'm sorry. I'm gonna get fired. And my boss is in the room, so here's that. Go ahead.
If I can. So,
Are you good now?
I would say, I think I'm good. Y'all tell me if I'm not. But in all honesty, the thing that really I think differentiates High Point versus really any of my other partners that I deal with in the day-to-day is just the amount of integrity and honesty that you guys bring to your clients. And the fact is that these guys picked up the platform, and it is a complicated, convoluted platform. I mean, any vendor has a multitude of controls and features available, but seeing how quickly the High Point team picked up and adopted that platform and started presenting to your clients was nothing short of impressive.
Appreciate that. The other piece, as I mentioned earlier, is High Point. Yes, we do have a great vision, but SentinelOne has a great vision for the product and moving into the XDR space. Was it last year or the year before you guys acquired Scalar?
So it was, I believe, the year prior.
Okay. If you're not familiar with what Scalar is, it's a data ingestion platform, and SentinelOne is leveraging this to build a new product called Skylight, which is quite impressive, and that's where we're going to go next.
Absolutely. I'll just give a quick explanation.
You want to do that?
So, what we did with Skylight is we took the Scalar acquisition and we transformed it into another name, Dataset. Now, what we're allowing is, even today, outside of the custom data ingestion through really what we're branding it as is a security data lake. And so what we want to provide is, of course, the autonomous protection, the remedial capabilities on those endpoints, but then we want to go ahead and correlate and ingest logs from really any source, whether it's O365, whether it's Palo Alto, Mimecast, Okta, whatever the vendor brand is. As long as there are logs available, we can get it ingested into our data lake. And that allows the analysts and admins to be able to query that data in our platform through one single UI. Again, I really hate to use a generic term like a single pane of glass, but again, if we can centralize access to all of those logs through one platform, through one means, one query language, that's going to help draw less time to resolution. It's going to save time and money by having all of that information centrally available.
It looks like we are about to resolve some of our technical difficulties.
It's a good time in there.
It is. Today there are a number of marketplace integrations, but with perfect. Well, with the direction and the roadmap, and I think you're going to talk through that, custom ingestion of syslog data and basically anything that generates a log will be capable or will be a capability of the platform. In addition to response to much of that data through orchestration, would be safe to say?
Absolutely. One of the key features that we've had for a couple of years now is something called STAR rules, and it stands for Storyline Active Response, meaning, let's say outside of the autonomous agent convictions and remediation, let's say an analyst at High Point can come in and a client brings a concern of, let's say, wants to know about any data that has left one of their most critical servers using any sort of IP communications. And so not only using the Skylight dashboard can we start to do that data collection and telemetry monitoring, but then we can also pinpoint all points of communication, what files were actually accessed and at what points in time. And essentially from there, build out a rule saying going forward, I'm going to write a query language that says, if this server has data exfiltrated through an IP address, I'd like to know about that. But not just know about that, I want to generate a remedial action, including something like network disconnection. So again, I don't like to present us as a DLP or FIM solution, but I have had analysts and admins come to me, partners come to me saying, can you guys help kind of offset or check that box? And that's where, again, the ability to write your own playbooks with automated actions kind of takes it a step above when you consider EDR and the fact that we allow such active responses.
Perfect. I think that was bringing us to the demo. We'll do a quick swap here. And we decided we needed to remove this, right?
Mm-hmm.
on time. Looking pretty good. While he's setting up, are there any questions, thoughts, things we can dig into a little bit more as we get connected here? Steve, anything online?
Nothing yet?
Okay. Feel free to call it out if,
Hey Caleb, maybe while he's
Yeah.
bringing up on the mic, when we're doing the evaluation of Endpoint, what was significant to me was how many, no, it's okay, how many incident response teams, forensics teams, insurance companies laid down their own instance of.
that is a good comment. One of the, Dean's saying one of the features that stood out to us during our evaluation was how many IR teams and insurance companies recommend or require the use of SentinelOne through incident response and remediation. It's
It was overwhelming.
yeah, it definitely was overwhelming. I want to say 90% is what we were seeing. It was a crazy number of IR companies requiring SentinelOne.
And so, team, what I would like to present today is I actually have a piece of malware that was detonated in my environment earlier. And I kind of wanted to touch on, unfortunately this resolution suddenly went a little bit wonky here. But I will work through this regardless. So, what we see here is a piece of malware that was detonated in our environment. Now, at our core, we are going beyond the kill and quarantine at the local level, and we do something called remediation and rollback. And I will pivot here for just a second to try to show this story. Oh gosh. So, for example, again, a core feature is the storyline, which at a behavioral level, we capture, in this case, our endpoint was in a detect-only mode. That's the only reason it is as expanded as it is. But what we're doing is capturing every single event per process that was detonated during that incident lifecycle and turning around and reporting back all of those activities and findings. So for example, if I wanted to pinpoint what communication was utilized, we see the source ports and IPs, the destination IPs and whatnot. I can go to these indicators and all of a sudden say, hey Caleb, hey team, first thing we saw was suspicious WMI queries being detonated or keylogger information associated the moment that Word document was kicked off. Now in this case, it actually had a chance to go through and do some impact to local files. So what we do is we go through and clean up every one of those events and processes that were detonated from that threat lifecycle, and then any files that were malformed or deleted or encrypted through something like ransomware, we have this ability called rollback where we can tie in and reverse engineer the encryption process to restore those files right back to the original state previous to the impact. Now with that being said, considering I want to explain where we're going, kind of show you guys maybe a little bit of a roadmap item, I wanted to talk about the XDR piece. So, at no cost to your, as a client of HighPoint Network, you guys get access to something called the marketplace. And within that marketplace, we have, through API integrations, again, access to a multitude of vendors. So again, Okta, Mimecast, Zscaler. In my own environment here, for example, I see under this XDR tab, data is now enriched automatically as soon as we have an incident generated. So outside of the endpoint, because now we have the endpoint resolved, but now let's say I'm analyzing and looking through some of these other findings through something like Okta, and I'm starting looking through something like Zscaler, and I'm looking at the user, Jean-Luc. Now I say, okay, where does Jean-Luc reside? He's an admin, it is true. What department? IT. So not great that we have such a violent activity through an admin under the IT group. Now if we go a little bit further down, or up here to XDR, now we have these vendors providing their details as part of the remediation in the incident page. So without having to engage with an identity expert or somebody managing Okta or Zscaler, I can now suddenly look at some of these findings and I get to this part where I see failed logins, and then I get a little bit further down to my source IPs over the last month for this user. So I see 42 connections in Boston. Let's say this client is located in the Boston office, that makes sense. Maybe they had an on-site conference to join from one of their partners in Oklahoma. Hey, that makes sense too. Why is there 14 connections from Russia? So now we get into essentially an impossible traveler scenario where we now have concerns about why is this user logging in from other geographical sources outside of essentially what makes sense over that last month. So within Skylight, what we do, and I'm just going to pivot directly into Alright, give that a second to load. And what Skylight is doing is capturing, again, all of the telemetry and metadata that we would capture normally, but we're also ingesting those logs from those other vendors like Okta, Zscaler, Mimecast. And, well, here, let's pick it back.
While he's doing that, does this bring up any questions, comments, thoughts from people here? And go ahead, Josh.
Can this diagnosis be done while Captain Picard's computer is in isolation?
Absolutely. So we do all
So
communication.
rephrase the question. Can the sorry, I just drew a blank. Can the queries and the information be collected from the endpoint while the machine is isolated? And go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. So any sort of network isolation detonated through the Sentinel-1 platform, we still allow full communication on port 443 from those agents up into the console. So any sort of push commands, any kind of controls that you needed to detonate against that system can absolutely be done. And then we even allow a certain level of allow listing through our firewall controls, where specifically under specific detonated network disconnected systems, let's say we needed to enable some kind of RDP or enable some kind of other communications for other ports and IPs, can absolutely be utilized, and it just impacts those systems that have been isolated. So now, what I'd like to present is, again, a little bit behind the scenes. It's a roadmap item, Q1, Q2 of next year, Purple AI. And as I said, just a quick tangent, as everything, including threat actors, are now utilizing AI technologies.
Got
like
a question?
GPTs. Yes, sir.
Does Sentinel-1 give the ability to apply software and OS patches based on security threats?
That is an excellent question. Oh, no, I think I get the gist of it. So as of today, we analyze and map that through a feature called Ranger Insights. And we actually come with so like for example, as a core offering under Highpoint Networks, through the Sentinel-1 platform, we do monitor for exploits out there in the environments and third-party apps. But as of maybe a month and a half ago, we just released an extended monitoring capability for OS level patches and vulnerabilities. Again, a roadmap item, so don't hold me to the sword for this, but patch management is actually on the way. And so we are gonna have a level of patch management as well as monitoring not just the third-party apps and vulnerabilities, but the OS patches and vulnerabilities as well. Now, getting into the idea of, again, AI. So let's say I'm a junior analyst and I'm being tasked with an incident from one of my clients, and I get that information around Jean-Luc. So I'm trying to identify as quickly as I can all of these odd activities around that user. So using Purple AI in the most human readable language possible, I can say something like, if I could spell correctly. Now, what Purple AI is doing is using the query language and translating what I just typed in at the human level, giving me the actual query. So right there, I can actually now utilize this query, edit, adjust it. I'm now seeing what the query language looks like, and then there's my results. So Purple AI has now built out a tabled summary showing me all the activities per endpoint, all associated with connections out to Russia or from Russia. And when captured, we can get you the destination country as well. So,
Question on that.
yes, sir.
What if you're really bad at spelling and
Is this a
there...
Steve question or an online question?
This is a Steve question.
So, the Purple AI component is actually pretty friendly with mispronunciations and mistypes. I know from personal experience. I was actually pretty impressed with the results. It still was able to translate to a certain degree. As I was, for lack of better words, fat fingering the terms, it still picked it up and was like, I think you meant this, here's your findings. And if I can add to that, what you also get is Purple AI now built out an analysis. It says, Nick, you're concerned about those connections to Russia. So here's some findings around that activity. And down below, we start to say, hey, by the way, here are some suggested questions that you may want to ask as a follow-up. Finally, we get to these little lightning bolt symbols. These are actions. So like you were asking earlier about the network disconnects, if we needed to push an immediate network disconnect for any of these systems impacting through those communications from Russia, let's go ahead and knock that out right here within Purple AI. last but not least, if I may, is when we just go to the simple EDR data itself. So I just want my data captured through my client, and let's say I just want to look at all the indicators of compromise that have been captured through my client. So with Purple AI, what it'll do is, as I'm just gonna close my eyes and pick one, behavioral indicator, we get the event pulled up, and I won't bore you with the technical details down below, but immediately I can just see real quick, this is under the evasion technique, through MITRE evasion, privilege escalation attempt. Here's Purple AI giving the human readable layout, where I find that the second paragraph really starts to get into the meat of the findings and why is this, again, a concern that we want to investigate further. So again, this is just kind of a roadmap. You can see, again, very much still beta, but it thrills me to no end to be able to see that ease of access, to be able to arm the analysts and admins, providing, again, quicker time to resolution and remediation on behalf of the clients.
Next question.
Yes, sir.
Does Sentinel-1 offer advanced threat detection and protection against a wide range of threats, including malware, ransomware, and zero-day attacks?
Absolutely, and again, we do it autonomously, again, at machine speed at that local level. And so let me just pivot to show how that works, a quick behind the scenes. So I'm just gonna go real quick to actually my detonation group where I do my demonstrations, and I'm gonna target our policy. Let me close this out, get a little bit more view. So, as we are looking through these findings, I am just literally sitting here in a detect-only mode for malicious and suspicious activities. However, running proactively 24/7, we have the different engines. So how it works is it starts with our reputation engine. That is the only engine that is cloud related, but what we're doing locally is we have nearly running in parallel to that cloud connected engine that's reputation based is the static AI, looking for things like high file entropy, malformed headers, anything that we can get initially preemptively before it has a chance to detonate. Now, should it actually have a chance to detonate, this is where we get into the kind of meat and potatoes of our agent, the behavioral AI. So what we're looking at there is documents and scripts, something that is listed in memory, anti-exploitation or fileless-based attacks, potentially unwanted applications. A huge one that is, I believe, should be turned on at all times. We don't turn it on out the gate, is the detect interactive threat engine, for example. So now we're actually looking at what are the users detonating via command line or PowerShell. And if it looks out of ordinary, let's say, why would Tom or Jerry in HR suddenly run a command from VSS admin to delete the shadow copies? That makes no sense. So we're going to very likely target that, convict it, and then you get your incident generated. From there, it's again, based on your policy, I hate to compare it to something as simple as a light switch, but again, we really are aiming for that ease of use, on or off. If it's on, we see it as malicious, we're going to go ahead and handle that remediation. And again, a single click of a button, we can tell Sentinel at the autonomous level, go beyond that kill quarantine. Let's go ahead and hit that remediation, especially if it's behavioral, and let's reverse the actions of those processes that were detonated. And then finally, if we need any of those files restored back, hit the rollback.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Other questions? Go ahead.
Would Purple AI, would you be able to use that? So we had like an incident like a little while back where it was brought to our attention that this certain FTP server was not good to communicate with, and we did all of our checks and stuff, and we had to actually go out and talk to some end users because it related to banking things. Would you be able to use that tool to search and say, hey, are any end users or computers or anything communicating to that specific FTP server?
Absolutely. All you would have to have is just essentially your IP address, and as long as the agent had information around that IP, any systems that we were protecting that would utilize that communication to or from that servers absolutely could be utilized very easily through Purple AI. You just type in what you're looking for around it. It knows that that's the IP that we need to look for, and incoming or outgoing communications will get you that, again, that full list, including anything that could be considered benign. And then from there, again, utilizing something like our star rules, you can feed that to your analysts or admins at Highpoint. They come in and they say, okay, you know what? We need to go ahead and put in a star rule that says, if we see communications not from, let's say, this range of systems or users, I need an alert generated. All right. Any other questions or concerns?
I have a question. Is there like an exercise threat to initiate on one of the endpoint machines to see how that
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So you know how to work, I mean, we have that provided by Endpoint Networks, but I'm just curious to see how the whole process would work, like the rollback. Is there, do you guys have to provide anything, or is there a sample?
Yeah, and so unfortunately, I didn't bring my NUC with me to do a live demonstration here. But just to kind of, again, it's a roadmap item, but something I just got privy to this week is we're going to be allowing essentially HighPoint team to have an environment generated with malware without any cause of concern setting up your own VMs or having to detonate anything on the client level. We're going to be handling it all on the back end ourselves. And essentially with that request, suddenly this environment has now been detonated with live malware. And the alerts will be generated under the incidents panel. So essentially what will happen is, again, I can see, oh, here's a not mitigated threat in the environment. And absolutely what we'll be able to do is allow us to go in there and essentially live push the remediation against those systems, and you'll see it all taking place from within the console. Otherwise, I do provide a live demonstration where I've got my Kali box set up, I detonate my ransomware, and I love showing off, again, especially the rollback feature. I mean, even today, and we have so much more coverage of other sources of security, but even at that core level of rollback, it is something else to be able to see what was a moment ago fully encrypted systems completely restored right back to the original state. So if you reach out to the HighPoint team, ask for that demonstration, they'll loop somebody like myself in, or again, any of the experts at HighPoint, and we could absolutely help work on that. All right, what do you think? Anything else?
I think excuse me, we're a few minutes early. Are there any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
So in terms of the remediations, are they kind of built into the program, or what is the kind of the process of building your own remediations?
Yes, sir. And so again, when it comes to the autonomous remediation, we're gonna hit the network isolation for that network control, or again, absolutely can hit over to the STAR rules. And here, let me go up to a higher level, I'll give you an example. So again, I had, when STAR was first released, I actually had an admin who came to me and essentially said, hey Nick, no pressure on you, but I have a server that that is completely isolated. We weren't considering putting SentinelOne on there because it's cloud related, but now that we see at the local level how much you do locally, we're gonna go ahead and put you on the server. But if we ever have data exfiltrated from that environment, I'm gonna lose my job. So what can you do for like DOP or FIM? And I had to say to him, I said, no sir, we don't do DOP or FIM. But again, with utilizing these STAR rules, bear with me here for a second, the view here is just wretched and I apologize. So here, notepad testing. So I see through here, my notepad testing is created by an analyst, and I see the condition. It's a site, we're using our SQLite language, source process name contains notepad.exe. Now again, no reason why we would need to block notepad.exe today, but as an example, again, for the real life situation, I gave him a query of endpoint name contains the name, let's say SRV-177, the name of the server. And I told him, let's go ahead and target like the file path of the directory where the databases would be hosted. And he said, no, I just want to know if anything of a certain size, a file size or larger, leaving the environment, that's what I want to look for. I said, fair enough. File size greater than or equal to 5 kilobytes and a destination IP, so leaving, heading out towards that remote IP, is not empty. Something as simple as that, we turn it into a STAR rule, and then we get over to the remedial capabilities, and what we said was, come on, kill quarantine, and essentially enable the network isolation. So, again, the view is a little rough here, but again, right there, treat as threat, malicious or suspicious. So again, if we just want to have an alert, and we want to, let's say, maybe not have the suspicious activities captured through live remediation, that's perfectly fine. At least you can get your alert set up. But again, in regards to network isolation and quarantine, that could also be enabled. And again, regardless of the autonomous remediation of the agent, we can at least make sure that the network control around that precious server is 100% contained and isolated. And then of course, come in there, do your investigations to your satisfaction, and when we're ready, we can mark it as resolved.
All
Does that
right.
answer the question?
So I'm pretty sure you just answered the question that was posted online as well. Does SentinelOne integrate threat intelligent feeds and support threat hunting techniques to proactively identify and mitigate endpoint security threats?
Oh my gosh.
That's pretty much what you just went over, right?
Well, yes, but let me go ahead and, again, I get really excited, so forgive me. But you guys, I kid you not, like literally a week ago, we just announced our full integration with Mandiant through Threat Intel Services. So again, utilizing the marketplace, go in there, and let's say you subscribe to Mandiant. We can then go in and immediately pivot and say, you know what, for my category that I want to view, I'm gonna go ahead and go to Threat Intelligence. And sure enough, here's my findings. So I see PowerShell.exe, WinRAR. Why would WinRAR.exe be selected? Well, I'm gonna go ahead and select this component, and then all of a sudden there's a category here for threat intelligence. Now, because of that integration through Mandiant, suddenly I can just click within that environment and get some very much expanded details around that threat activity. This is a horrible sample, so let me just go back. But the answer is yes, absolutely. And so natively, what we do, even without the extended threat intelligence integrations, is we tie into other sources like virus total and recorded future, and that's just part of the, again, the standard findings that we do, let's say reputation-based. But again, through this new threat intelligence extended integration, we start to get in and start to show a lot more relevant details through these other third-party vendors. Oh, for goodness sakes. But in any case, it absolutely is there and available. Let me go down to Sentinel 1. There we go. Close that up. There we go. So now meaty cats, right? So I mean, if anybody isn't familiar, pretty active malware in recent times. And again, I hit my threat intelligence, get my findings. I see 2 different threat actors. I see UNC 2727. So I click. And again, outside of what we're already autonomously providing, I can immediately, through the Mandiant integration for threat intelligence, start to get a full description around this threat actor. I can see immediately what kind of targeted industries would be covered or at most risk through these kinds of activities, and even target locations. So again, really expanding on the enrichment around the convictions that we're already providing natively and helping, again, just centralize all of that information under one source.
If you had that rule like you're talking about, anything over 10 meg or whatever that transfer, let's say that, I don't know if it would, what protocol, if it would be an email or a file, whatever, would that payload actually transfer? Or would it, do you see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Because you're detecting it and there's a rollback, so I don't know if it actually happens.
Great question. So again, at the autonomous level, when we go into the remediation, so essentially it would have to land first on the endpoint that we are protecting, but at least again, with the STAR rules, that's actually utilizing what we call deep visibility. So I mean, again, I am not at all going down the sales path, but under the complete licensing, forgive me, I think ePass Plus you guys call it. You get access to, again, the extended EDR data collection, again, and then access to that skylight, and essentially that's where the STAR rules reside, is event data outside of something that would be automatically captured as malicious or suspicious generally. That's where you can essentially go beyond what the agent is autonomously monitoring and then get that response and inactions or alerts from. So the answer is absolutely yes, but we would expect that once the user clicks or selects the file and it actually is in process of being written to disk, we're already hooked in, because again, we're proactive. So we're already monitoring. And
some amount would be exfiltrated before the start of the trigger though, whatever your limit.
Right, right, so the event has to be captured.
My bad.
Okay.
Yeah, so what I said was some amount of data would be exfiltrated up to the limit that was set in the rule. So if you had 10 megs would be exfiltrated before the rule would trigger. If you had it at 5K, 5K.
Gotcha.
But in theory, technically, if you have a 20 meg file and you only upload 10 of it, then it's gonna be broken.
And if I may, let's be a little more realistic. Like if we also wanted to say file extension associated with an outbound IP connection includes .rar, .zip, .exe, whatever the extension of that file type is, you can easily add those other fields into your query, and that way you can get as granular as you need to as far as exactly what are we looking for, and once that threshold is met, now we expect to see that response provided. Absolutely.
We've probably got room for one, maybe 2 more questions. Do we have another Steve question?
Other?
Why'd you go with purple?
Because purple's pretty. It's just something about it, just captures the eyes. The one thing I will say is again, you know, here I am looking, let's say for example, talking about the application vulnerability management. And again, just to plug in the Ranger Insights piece. What we're doing now is I see, you know, from my visibility, what OSs, what systems are impacted. And so again, today we do an extended scan that is available through the version that Highpoint provides for your clients. Essentially the ability to map out those third parties and the vulnerability stance. But again, with Ranger Insights that again, it's only been out a couple months now. What we allow is again, the extended scanning capabilities for Windows and Linux. And if I may, I'll just show you guys a quick example of that. I go over here to my filters, hit OS, and let's say I see Windows Server 2022 is impacted, or 2019. So I'm going to go ahead and see how many systems in my environment are impacted. What's the status that's not mitigated? And let me close that out. And then let's go to the CVEs. So now when I'm looking for my CVEs, I see a pretty high risk right off the gate. So from the level of severity down, I click, and we're going to give you not just findings natively. So again, today you'll get it from MITRE and National Vulnerability Database. But what I'm again also proud of is the fact that SentinelOne has our own data captures and our own analyzing of these exploits out there, including things like proof of concepts or the temporal values of the risk. And so essentially, what's your attack vector? You know, what has been seen out there in the wild? Has it been impacted? And then any kind of indicators, such as is a patch available? Now again, I always tell people, this is at its core today, excellent visibility in any gaps in the security posture of the environment. But again, later into next year, we are absolutely intending on releasing a level of patch management right here from the console.
If that patch management is something you're looking, oh, I'm sorry, Julie, go ahead.
This might be a dumb question, but can you do web control through your product? We'd like to block social media.
Yes. So there are some talks, again, it would be around. Today, we just do local integration of firewall controls. But again, if we were to see something that does handle something like let's say for example, something like full block or allow listings, that's not really what we're offering today ourselves. But through those integrations, let's say we do have something like, well, let's say from my experience at Carbon Black, like a Carbon Black Protect, right? Something that explicitly blocks or allows communications. Again, that's not really the direction that we're looking at, but as far as network controls, if we don't have it ourselves natively, we should absolutely be able to tie into another vendor that does provide that and get that integration built in, again, at no additional charge. So otherwise, it would just be local queries, and again, the query language, and as soon as we see that communication out there, so like for example, who out there is going to, you know, piratebay.org, right? And something that, why are we going to Pirate Bay on a company asset and company time?
All right, excellent. That gives us 5 minutes to mosey on out and get to the main conference room.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.